Good morning and welcome back to Goshen Church Online. If you will, please turn your Bibles to Mark chapter 5. We're going to be looking at verses 1 through 20 today. Last week we talked about the storm that Jesus and the disciples went through crossing the Sea of Galilee. And in our passage today, that they've made it to the other side, to the country of the Gadarenes, and they have this encounter with a wild man. Let's go ahead and jump into our passage this morning and look at these verses. The Bible says, "And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. Neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them out away of the country. Now there was there nigh unto the mountain a great herd of swine feeding. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine. And the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000, and were choked in the sea. And they that fed the swine fled and told into the city and into the country. And they went out to see what it was that was done. And they came to Jesus, and see him that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion, sitting and clothed, and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And they that saw it told them how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coast. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit, Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, Go home to thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. And he departed, and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men did marvel. One line of thought that skeptics use trying to disprove that God exists, it goes something like this. If God is all-powerful and chooses not to stop evil, then he's not good. And if he's good but isn't able to stop evil, then he's not all-powerful. What they're trying to say is because we see evil in our world, that means that God is either not all-powerful or that God is not good. Because if God were all-powerful and good, then why doesn't he end all evil? Now, we can see evil in all the world around us, so they say that God must not be good or not have the power to do anything about it. What they fail to understand is that there is coming a day when all evil will end. One day, Jesus will destroy all evil forever. Jesus' death and resurrection tell us that God was starting the world heading in that direction where one day only his righteousness would exist and Satan would be defeated forever. Now, understandably, we want this to happen right now, but we have to be patient and wait on God's timing. As we wait, we believe that God is all-powerful, truly all-powerful, and that he truly is good. We're always going to have the problem of evil in our world until Jesus returns and makes all things new. When we understand that this is a part of God's plan, we cannot deny his sovereignty or goodness while we live in the evil of this world. Well, then how do we know that God is all-powerful and good? I believe the best way to know anything about God is to look at Jesus as he's revealed to us in the Bible. The book of Colossians tells us that Jesus is the image of the invisible God, and in him the whole fullness of deity dwells bodily. So, since Jesus is part of the Trinity, What we read to be true of Jesus is true of God the Father. The more we come to know Jesus, the more we come to know God. In John chapter 14, Philip, he didn't grasp this idea. He actually asked Jesus to reveal to them God the Father. Jesus' response to them was, "Have I been so long with you, and yet hast thou not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. And how sayest thou then, show us the Father?" In this section of the book of Mark, we see three stories that are consecutive that show us different aspects of Jesus' power. Last week we saw that Jesus had power over nature by calming the winds and the waves. This week we see he has power over evil, and then the next story shows us his power over death. But all of these stories show us Jesus using his power for the good of people. The amazing thing about Jesus' power is how he's able to deliver people who really have a need. In our text this morning, we see Jesus' power and goodness deliver a man from the power of Satan. When Jesus and the disciples, they stepped out on the other shore, immediately this man comes running unto them full of evil spirits. Now, it wasn't just one demon terrorizing him. He has so many that he had taken on the name Legion because there were so many. This man is in a very bad way, and he came to the only one that could possibly help him. We know from our text that he'd been kicked out of society. He'd even been bound up to try to protect him and to protect other people from him. But the evil working inside him was so strong that whatever they tried to tie him up with was just not strong enough. He was alone, living in a graveyard, in a miserable existence, just crying all the time. When we look at this man, we probably feel sorry for him, knowing the condition of his life. But when we read this passage and understand what this man was going through, we should see ourselves a little bit. This man's life is a good metaphor for the human condition in this world. Now, we may not have been controlled by demons before we came to Christ, but the Bible does tell us that we were ruled by forces of darkness, that we were blinded by the god of this world, talking about Satan, that we're the children of the devil, we're slaves to the evil one, and not knowing how to be freed from the bondage of our sin. I believe we were more like this man than we may have realized. The only hope that we have is the same hope that the wild man experienced that day. It's Jesus landing his boat on our shores. When the man saw Jesus, he came running. He fell at Jesus' feet. He went to the only place where he could find true relief and deliverance. In verse 7, we see the demons speaking up, realizing that they've entered into the presence of God, and that was a very dangerous place for them. They knew exactly who Jesus was. They called him the Son of the Most High God. When this legion of demons encounters Jesus, they immediately recognize him as the Son of the Most High God. Now remember, Mark here, he's showing us Jesus' power over the forces of hell. Last week we saw that waves obey him. Now we see this week that demons tremble before him. The demons, they knew the power that Jesus had and begged him not to torment them. They immediately knew that Jesus was more powerful than they were, and they begged him not to send them out of the country. Now begging, that was the right approach for them, because as fallen angels, they had no rights before Jesus, because Jesus is God. Jesus, at that moment in time, he could have ended them completely, but it wasn't yet their time. That they weren't to be destroyed yet. Instead, Jesus, he commanded these evil spirits to leave the man's body, and he sent them into some nearby pigs. Now, people may have wondered, and why would Jesus react this way? Why kill the pigs? You know, the owners, they've taken a major loss. There's 2,000 pigs here. I believe that there are several reasons why Jesus could have done this. First of all, by putting the demons in the pigs, we have an opportunity to see what the demons' ultimate goal was. That being utter destruction and death. Whatever they indwelled, they were going to destroy it. That should be a great warning to us that sin is not something that we need to play with, because the end result is always death and destruction. Secondly, Jesus, he was able to demonstrate how truly powerful he was. These demons were so strong that they could kill 2,000 pigs. But at the same time, they trembled, afraid of Jesus because of what he could do. They actually had to ask Jesus permission before they entered into those pigs. Jesus, he may have also done this to show that the life of one human being entangled in pure evil was more important than a herd of animals. Jesus, he showed more compassion for a human life than a herd of pigs. I believe that's a lesson that we've forgotten in our world today. One commentator I read when I was studying said that only in a culture of death where human life is denigrated do people value animals more than people. You know, that's a really sad state that we find ourselves in today. Human life is so important and should be valued highly, just like God does. God, he cared more about that man, the man created in his image, and the one that can be redeemed by salvation, more than any animal that does not bear his image. But the death of these pigs almost becomes kind of a side note when everyone realizes what happens to this formerly crazy man. I'm sure the whole town knew who this man was. That the children may have been threatened that if they didn't behave, they would be taken to see the crazy man. I'm sure that they made fun of this guy. They saw him running around half naked, screaming, just possessed. And when they saw this change, these people were amazed. You know, they in the past had tried to restrain him, and now he was clothed and in his right mind. I'm sure this was something that they had never expected to see. But when someone comes in contact with the power and the goodness of Jesus Christ, they're going to be changed. You know, even though we will never be perfect, there is always visible evidence in a person's life when they've met Jesus. That's why as a church we meet with all prospective members of our church. We want to make sure that whoever is joining has truly come to know Jesus Christ. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for evidence that the power and the goodness of Jesus has changed someone's life. Jesus' love and power visibly changed this man's life. And that very thing should be true of anyone who has become a believer. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 tells us that, therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are new. When you encounter Christ, your life will change. So we've seen the man's response, but the people of that country, they had a different response. They were terrified. Here's a man who has the power to remove demons, heal a wild man, and see 2,000 of their pigs killed. It almost seems they would have preferred to have their animals back and have this man back how he was. The people were afraid and they wanted Jesus to leave them. They really did not realize the opportunity that they were losing by sending Jesus away. But today, there are many who are like those townspeople that reject Jesus after an encounter with him. They really do not realize exactly what they're rejecting. Because Jesus, he's standing with open arms, wanting them to open their lives to him and for him to heal them. The good news of the gospel is that if anyone will receive Jesus, they will be forgiven of their sins and will no longer be living for their old master Satan. When we accept Jesus' terms for salvation, we will be clothed and in our right minds. Jesus, he takes the filthy clothes of sin and puts on us his righteous robes that make us appear pure in God's sight, allowing us to have a restored relationship with God. Now, once we're saved, we need to quickly understand that we are saved for a purpose. At the end of the story, the man that was changed by Jesus, he wanted to stay with Jesus. I'm sure he was probably a little afraid of how the community would react to him. I mean, they knew how this man had been, and they didn't maybe not know how permanent this change might be. And I'm sure there was also a whole lot of gratitude to Jesus for saving his life. But Jesus, he does something interesting. He doesn't let him go with him, but instead says, go back home to your friends and family and tell them about the miraculous change in your life. Let them know the compassion shown to you. Jesus, he knew the impact that this man could have on his own community. Jesus, he saved this man and then tasked him with telling others about the good news of the gospel. Brothers and sisters, that is the same thing that we are saved to do. We are saved to serve. We're called to go back to our homes, our schools, our jobs, our neighborhoods, our cities, our nation, and proclaim the good news of the great change that God can do in our lives. If you say you're a follower of Jesus, but make no effort to help others know and follow Jesus, how can you say you're actually a follower of Him? You know, we always promote the things that we love, whether it be a restaurant or music or whatever it may be. So if Jesus has touched our lives with His love and power, we're going to want to promote Him to others. This morning, I hope that I've been able to clearly communicate that sin and the evil that Satan produces is not something to play around with. It's powerful. But that being said, we have someone who is much more powerful and can impact our lives for good, for the better. Now, Jesus, He wasn't flexing His power just to simply show off His muscles. He is genuinely concerned for those that are lost, those that are wrapped up in sin, that live a life that is just destroying them. We who have received the love of God in our lives are tasked to share that good news with the world, to those who have never experienced Jesus' power to change their lives. When Jesus gave that man his assignment, that man eagerly fulfilled it. He went throughout the area of Decapolis proclaiming to the amazement of the people that Jesus had changed his life dramatically. Church, this is a test of our salvation. Are you willing and are you telling your story? We all have a story to tell. No matter how good we were or how bad we are all called to tell the story. Can you today sing that hymn and truly mean it? I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story because I know 'tis true. It satisfies my longing as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story. 'Twill be my theme and glory to tell the old story of Jesus and His love. This morning as we close, my question to you is simply this. Are you telling your story?